All right, welcome to episode 62 of the At Bat podcast presented by War Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news as well as take a trip around the league. I am Saul Rodriguez, joined by my co-host Miles Porter as well as Gabe Wilkins, who you've seen on War Media's Open Run. We are back after a week of hiatus. How's everybody doing? How we doing, Miles?
Hey, doing good. We're in the playoffs. That's fun. Hit my first of all, this is the latest I've ever waited to hit a home run. And like I've been hitting for a lot of averages here, a lot of doubles and singles and driving in runs. But this, they've been pitching to me very well this year. And so I finally got a poke, a 3-run home run. That was the first of three in a row. Crazy. That
Oh,
was
wow.
crazy. Um, and so yeah, we're hot right now. We're excited to keep it going on Friday against the Warriors at the Rock, and there will be fireworks, kind of like during the game and I think a little bit after the game, depending on what the Milkmen do. But no, man, loving ball right now. Loving it. Playoff baseball is fun.
Milwaukee Jaguars. We are a Milwaukee Jaguar podcast as always. So keep us posted, Miles, and we're cheering and we're rooting for MVP Miles Porter always. All right, so keep it up. Gabe, how we doing, man?
Heck yeah.
I can't complain, man. Life is good. Been checking out a lot of baseball games. Even went behind your enemy lines inside of town on the north side to check out Ellie De La Cruz and Ronald Acuna when they were
Oh
here
yeah.
before the most recent series with the Crosstown Classic. So I just been chilling, man. I can't complain at all.
How was your experience at Wrigley, Gabe? You can tell us the truth.
Oh man, same old, same old. You know what I'm saying? The things that we talk about behind the scenes, ain't much change. But one thing I will say, the brand of baseball there is definitely different. You could tell that the stakes are much higher. And that the fan base is very supportive. But it was funny just to watch games as an observer, not really having any interest, but wanting to see good baseball, which is what I got.
Yeah, that's how I feel. It is nice to just lay back and not worry about the game. It's like every time I go to a Sox game, which I always say, I go to more Sox games than Cubs games throughout the year, and it's nice just to like lay back, eat some good food, and just watch baseball than to like be at the Cubs game. I feel like when I go to Cubs games, I don't even feel like eating. I think I'm just like watching the game and like I need to see a Cubs win. And I went at like in the last few weeks, and I think I might have mentioned it, but I went to the Cubs Red Sox game on a I think it was on a Sunday or Saturday, and of course Steele gets rocked. But just so you guys know, I've said this and I've said this to a lot of people now, but this year I'm not only in my own three, but I think my run differential's got to be like in the 40s because like and I'm talking about
Ooh,
no negative and I'm talking like not even plus. I'm talking
I know what you're
minus.
talking about.
Jesus, I mean it is trash. I went to Minnesota, watched the Cubs twice, and they got shellacked both times. Then I come back home and I'm like, I'm going to Wrigley, get the Cubs against the Red Sox team that's all right. Steele's pitching, and they get rocked in that one too. So I should just not go to any more games this year.
That
Well,
I
if it
understand
makes
what you
you
mean.
feel better, Saul, if it makes you feel better, the Cubs are undefeated in the two games that
Oh,
I went to. And I started to go to the finale of the Crosstown Classic last minute. But I
oh.
said, no, I don't want to mess it up. Sox won 6 in a row going in and looked like we was going to have a seventh one. And a sinker got
Oh
left up
man.
in the middle of the zone and Morel went yard. And I was like, damn, maybe I should have went.
Hey,
So yeah,
I,
I guess I done gave him some good luck that I didn't think I had. And if I go
keep
back to the last 5 years, they 3-0 in the games I went to. The only time I've ever seen the Cubs lose a game is to my White Sox. The first game I ever went to at Rick. And that's
oh
20 years
wow.
ago.
I'm gonna get a GoFundMe just so we can get Gabe out to all the games this year.
Hey, I'm giving him too much good luck, man. I'm all for prosperity, but I don't know if I'm that prosperity, like
I
or
mean,
whatever with it.
I think if I went back to to the last few years, I for sure have positive record for you guys in favor of the White Sox
Okay.
because I feel like I for the most part I see White Sox wins, but I think this year I think I've seen out of like the few games I've gone to, I think I've seen the White Sox lose twice. I went to that Marlins one where the Marlins came back in the ninth.
Oh man, don't remind
Yeah,
me of that.
yeah. Oh yeah, because you were at that one too. Obviously, it was a
I was
weekend.
we met
Yeah,
up there.
yeah. And did they? You know what? And I'm totally blanking. They won. Who won the Cleveland one that I saw you at? That was
The
like
Sox
a
won
couple
that
weeks
game.
ago. Sox
Sox
won.
won that
Okay.
game. It
Oh
was
yeah.
7-2. That was a
That was
blowout game.
yeah. That was the one where Tim Anderson finally
Yeah,
hit his
when he
home
went
run.
yard. Yeah.
And I was like, look at that. I should come for more games for Tim Anderson so he can hit a home run for you guys because that was his first one in like a year. So good,
Mm-hmm.
good to see there. But hey, we'll start off, with speaking of Chicago baseball as we always do. But obviously, the last game of that series, we'll get into it because that Christopher Morel walk-off home run, of course, was a cherry on top. But man, I'll tell you one thing: this 2-game series felt longer than just 2 games because because so much happened in those 18 innings that each team had their their little moment. And I mean, in game 1 Luis Robert had his moment, and we'll talk about that. And then of course in game 2 Morel had it. So it was a good series. So we'll talk about that first. But man, we'll get into a lot today. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on around the league with, of course, the very unfortunate Wander Franco situation there. Try to get into a little bit of the wild card race as well, and we'll get to much more if possible. But we'll start off with the Crosstown. I mean, man, coming off, recording this on Thursday and the game was on Wednesday. The Cubs are off, so are the Sox. Overall thoughts on these 2 games, because like I said, it felt longer than that. But Miles, what is your overall thoughts on this series? And the Cubs, of course, won 3 out of 4 for the season series.
I mean, it's awesome, bro. I think it's cool. You really see the passion that Chicago rivalry come out when it comes to these two teams playing each other. Man, I think kind of like what I just said in terms of passion. You really see how much each fan base cares about their teams, and listen, Cubs fans, I love you guys. You can flip off Luis Robert all you want. He's getting paid, number one. Number two, in our face. You know what I mean? We can't be salty about it. He caught one. Julian Merritt, it is what it is when it comes to that. But I think it's so cool when it comes to these games, just the passion that comes out, and seeing Morel hit a walk-off the next day in a game that just felt very bleak the entire time. There was just not really any energy, but seeing Madrigal hit a home run, and then that magical last inning. It's awesome, man. It's really cool, and it does feel like postseason baseball. And I think there's 2 things I would change. One, I think a 3-game series is a little bit better, but it does make you kind of savor these games more. I think a 3-game series is what it has to be. 2, I think the stakes are even higher if you have 2 winning Chicago teams. I think we felt what that was like in terms of just good competitive baseball. Now you had 2 competitive Chicago teams playing against each other, both shooting for the playoffs, and not just the north side and not just the south side. I just remember being at the Cubs and White Sox back in 2008 when I was younger at Wrigley Field. Dude, crazy. So, I love it truly, and I look forward to next year. I just think I think 3 games is better. Give me a little bit more.
I agree, and we've said this before on the show, is that we don't, there's plenty of reasons as to why they try to do that and stuff, which don't make any sense to me, but whatever. Next year, like we said before, the schedule's already come out for next year, and it's the same thing, 2-2. So we'll have to live through that again. But Gabe, what were your overall thoughts on this series? Of course, the Sox were able to split this time around at Wrigley, but it didn't work out for them in those 4 games. But man, they gave the Cubs everything they had in this series.
I mean, anytime you playing a team on the north side, be it as a Sox fan, as a Sox player, I like you guys. You Cub fans are all right with me. For the most part, I don't really give a damn about most of the other ones. I'm just gonna be honest. And I'm pretty sure the feeling is mutual. This is a series that Southsiders, fans, and players alike get up for, and you saw it when Luis Robert Jr. went yard on that slider that was left up in the heart of the plate from Julian Merriweather. I've never seen him show emotion like that. And initially watching it live, I didn't understand why he was doing that. I know he likes to celebrate home runs and have, hit guys with the bat flip. But I was like, man, somebody chirping. And then just when I saw him crossing home plate, he does this. But I didn't, see the reaction of the fans at the time. And then I'm on Twitter scrolling through, midway through the game is getting to the, final 3 outs. And I'm like, oh, okay. Poetic justice. I see why he did what he did. So, that was a beautiful moment in a season that has been full of lowlights for this White Sox ball club that had high expectations entering the year. You will take that moment. And that was a hallmark moment in the Crosstown Classic rivalry, in my opinion, that's been missing a lot of those highlight and hallmark moments since the 2000s, where it was evident back in that era that these two teams and these two fan bases really didn't care much for one another. And those games had a lot of energy that I think this current rivalry is missing, but we saw that this week. And then to see Chris Morel, who struck out on a nasty slider that was left up high by Gregory Santos in game 1, get his revenge on a 0-2 or a 1-2 pitch with sinker left at the heart of the zone and walk it off. You could tell he was looking for payback. And the reason why that came about my eyes is because the White Sox had some opportunities in that game that they didn't cash in on. Mike Clevenger went 7 innings, didn't allow a run, exited the game with a 3-run lead. White Sox had the bases loaded in the top of the 8th. Nobody out. Ross brings Michael Fulmer in. He strikes out the side in which he faces. That can't happen. Situational hitting has to be better on the White Sox side. They had a chance to actually bring the Crosstown Cup home, but unfortunately, they weren't able to, because when you fail to execute in situations like that, you give a team hope. And that's what happened. Madrigal comes up the next inning on an 0-2 pitch, takes a yard thanks to the friendly win at Wrigley Field, and they had some life. And this is a Cub team that's playing for a playoff spot, and they showed you why with their fight late in that game that easily could have gotten away. And had it gotten away, they would have lost 2 out of their last 3 series. But fortunately for them, they pick up a game in the standings and have a chance to do more with, in the midst of a stretch where Milwaukee's playing against some tough teams.
Yeah, and the Cubs are obviously facing, teams under 500, and they're facing the Royals up next and the Tigers. So yeah, the Cubs, this is the opportunity where the Cubs, it's one of those things where, and they've stressed it a lot, and on networks I've watched as well, is Cubs have one of the easiest, if not the easiest, schedule for the remainder of the season. But that's just that's obviously easy to say. It's another thing to go out there and win those games. And
Absolutely.
we saw in perfect example is game 1, where Tuki Toussaint obviously didn't pitch his best game, right? But he was able to hold the Cubs to 3 runs. And, it's one of those things where that's why it felt also like all these Crosstown series to me feel like playoffs, no matter where these teams are at. It's just
I
because
agree.
people care so much, right? People care so much about these games.
Yeah.
In game 1, I feel like it was a perfect example of like, man, the Sox just shut down the Cubs batters. It felt like a playoff game where like you go in hot, and it doesn't matter how hot you go in or whatever, and no matter what pitcher's on the mound, they just know how to attack. And that's what it looked like to me. It looked like Sox pitchers from Tuki Toussaint to Aaron Bummer to Santos, they knew how to attack Cubs hitters. They were doing it well. And in game 2, it worked up until the 9th. Because even in game 2 with Clevenger was doing everything right. Cubs
and
had
got out of jams.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say 2 times the Cubs, because you mentioned that the Sox had the base load, nobody out. The Cubs had that twice, and they couldn't do anything. So that's another thing too, is that the Cubs didn't, capitalize on that. And it felt again like a playoff game where you're like, man, you don't get that many opportunities with that many guys on with nobody out. You don't do anything. That's going to cost you. You do it again. And I was like, yeah, they're going to lose this game. Like in the 8th, I was like, this game's probably over. Like, right. And I saw the bases loaded, nobody out for the Sox. And Michael Fulmer comes in with some of the nastiest sweepers I've seen him all season. And he's been pitching better over the last few months. But man, that was for sure his like best pitching performance of the season, no doubt. Because I think even that the fans, at that point they use that momentum for the rest of the game. Because
You
I
have
feel
to.
like I feel like the stadium was the Cubs fans, at least. I shouldn't say the
Yeah.
stadium was that, because the White Sox fans were loud and you could hear them. But yeah, that was a perfect example. And I think Morel in that at bat, like, I think he was gonna swing at that fourth pitch no matter where it was.
You knew he was.
Yeah, yeah. No.
And that's why I have an issue with some White Sox fans who want to get on Gregory Santos. Let's provide some context into that. Gregory Santos is a young closer in this league. He just got that role. And the only reason why he's in that role is because Liam Hendricks is down and out with Tommy John surgery and will not be able to return into the latter part of the 2024 season. He's currently mentoring Santos as we speak and has been staying with the team in spite of most of the time when guys had those surgeries, they don't. And he's doing it because he's trying to help Santos get accustomed to being in this role. Chris Morel, we know, is a guy that's very aggressive. And he loves moments like that. I was afraid from the moment Santos walked Dansby Swanson, because you know when Morel's up there what he's going for. The fact that he got an 0-2 count on him, I'm like, man, throw him a slider low and away, because you know he's swinging. He got cute and admitted that and left a pitch dead red in the middle of the zone that he sat on and did damage to. And Chris Morel is one of those guys in this series. I think he's slowly becoming, to White Sox fans, in my opinion, what Aramis Ramirez once was. It's like the bigger the moment, the bigger the stage, you have to be like, oh shit, okay, he's at the plate. You can't play around.
My favorite Cubs player of all time. Just pointed that out. Go ahead.
Oh, Aramis Ramirez was a bad boy.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be the
He's
first
my
to
favorite
admit
player of
that.
all
Like,
time.
I got a lot of nightmares with Aramis Ramirez. You know, terrorizing White Sox pitching. So with Chris Morel coming through in that situation, that was key. But Gregory Santos is a young closer, still trying to learn and figure out things. Has had a hell of a season, but this is part of the experience. When you got 40,000 plus fans on your butt, rooting against you, as many in the building that are for you, you know, pressure make diamonds, but it could also break pipes too. And this is a situation that he has to get more familiar with and accustomed to. You saw him shining it in game 1, game 2, not so much, but you got to have guys on the other end, such as your veterans, back you up. And failing to score and silence that Wrigley Field crowd that consisted of Cub fans there, like that, to me, that was the ball game. That was the ball game.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is that how quickly some Sox fans, as you mentioned, how quickly some Sox fans forget that Santos went out there and had a 5-out save on Tuesday. So you know, it's gonna happen, regardless of growing pains. Like, it's for closers. Even some of the best closers have blown saves. I mean,
100%.
there's reasons why there's elite closers with like a losing record every year. Is because they're out there and they're in the line of they're in the line of fire. So it's gonna happen every once in a while. But man, no, you're right. And the thing with Christopher Morel is that no moment I feel like is too big for him, and he even he credits Wilson Contreras with that mindset of no moment getting too big. And if you watch the Cubs on a daily, you notice Christopher Morel every time that he takes that he steps out of the box, he takes that little breath. He's like, and Wilson did that all the time. Wilson, I believe he still does that now. And he learned that from him. And I think that's something very important that, like, even though it's hard, I'm sure now with the clock and all that, that it's pretty cool. But man, regardless of that him, when he hit that home run, I think the soul came out of my body like that. It was kind of like SpongeBob in that meme where he's kind of floating in the air. I think that was me. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, just the moment, the game, like, it is just insane. And then the fact that this dude took off his jersey before he even got the home plate.
I saw that. That kind of ticked me off. I ain't gonna lie. I was hot, but I
don't blame you.
I understand. I mean, baseball's an emotional game.
Yeah.
It's a sport where if you succeed 3 times out of 10, the way that he did, you have a right to celebrate as you please. I mean, every dog has his day, and it's a game that will humble the hell out of you, even if you're a fan. And that was one of those moments. And you know, everybody gets the turn. The North Side has got to turn Tuesday night to be humble.
Yeah.
White Sox fans got to turn to be humble on Wednesday night. So it comes with the territory in this rivalry where the stakes are high and will forever remain high. And I can't wait to see them in 2023 because I believe this is the first time the Cubs have ever been able to say that they hold the Crosstown Cup since they've,
so. Yeah,
since they've had this. So yeah, like next year, the White Sox should be on a mission when they had these 4 games.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too is that he looked like a soccer player, like just scored a last minute goal.
Yeah, he definitely
took
did.
off his jersey. So, but yeah, no, hey, you're right though. But that's the thing though, Gabe. Another thing too, and Miles, I want to get your take on how you felt when you watched that home run. But another thing too is that there's so many people that like you're right. You said it best, Gabe. Where the Sox or the Cubs had their time to get humbled on Tuesday. The Cubs or the Sox had their moment to get humbled here. As the fans. So yeah, it's like let the Sox have their moment on Tuesday because there's so many butthurt Cubs fans. Like I just saw it all over Twitter, and I'm just like, dude, like you're gonna be doing the same thing when the Cubs do something, and guess what? Yeah,
they know they do.
Yeah, exactly. And then on Wednesday, perfect example. I'm like, they're over here like trashing, like trying to talk smack about like Lou Rob, and I'm like, dude, like Luis Robert, first of all, and you mentioned it, you were talking about celebration. I actually like that because it's not the first time he does that, like the turnaround thing, because he do that in the Cardinals series. I think he did in like a Cardinals. I don't remember. I forgot. He hit a bomb.
Well, what he does, he hits the ball so damn hard with his forearm muscles. Sometimes he has to lean and strike a pose just to make sure the ball is fair. And I get it because even when I'm watching the game down the left field line, I'm like, you know, okay, is that fair? Because every time he hits it, it looks like it's gonna go foul.
Yeah,
he's hitting it just fair enough to touch the bases and take a lap around. So I mean, I get it, but that one, he knew he got all of that.
Oh yeah,
that one. They hit that shit on waivers.
I know, and that's what like everybody, you know, like that was like an artwork of him, like looking at the fans and like shushing them and they're flicking them off. Yeah, I mean that's art right there. It's baseball, man. And like people were like over here, like like crying about it, and then Wednesday they're over here like going crazy, and it's just, but it's part of it, part of the rivalry. But Miles, what was your reaction to that home run? Because I'm sure you weren't in your seat.
It was lit. That was awesome. That was so cool. It was such a good moment. And no, I think you guys make great points where it's just like the Sox are gonna have their moments in this series, the Cubs are gonna have their moments in this series. If there's one thing, especially as like a ball player, there's one thing I'm not gonna do. I'm not gonna hate on another guy for having his moment. Okay. Honestly, that may have been one of my exactly. And I think that may have been one of my favorite moments of this entire year of baseball. Mm-hmm. Seeing Luis Robert turn around to the fans and be, shut your ass up. I'm just a fan of that. That's dope because, I by the way, Cubs fans, listen, I love us, right? We're not a tough fan base. No one comes to Wrigley Field and thinks, oh no, no. First of all, by the way, we talked about this in between episodes. The music that they're playing at Wrigley Field, stop it, bro, stop it. if I'm an opposing player, I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, go ahead and play Sweet Country Road. Yeah, I'm so scared. Shut up. Listen, I think it's just man, it's just like from one ball player to another, bro. I love that, bro. I think it's so dope, and this entire series it's great. And I think I feel that Madrigal still hasn't gotten enough credit for kind of getting the offense going a little bit, giving us some spark. Without that home run, it's a tie game. We don't know what happens when we go into extra innings. And that kind of we got the California rule. We got the ghost runner on second base now. And who's to say the Sox don't drive in a run and take the lead? And regardless if we start the next inning with a runner on second, the other team has momentum. I don't care what someone tells me. My mindset will never change. Mm-hmm. I think there's so many great things to take away from this Cubs series, just kind of showing how resilient they are and what they're going for right now. It's evident. We're beating a lot of good teams this year, and we're winning games that we're supposed to be winning. So it's exciting, man. It's really exciting, and I'm hoping they figure it out soon on the South side because I think it's better when both teams are winning.
Yeah, and one of the things that I saw after the game was the fact that was just the second, it was the last time that the Cubs walked off on the Sox was the game I was at where Soriano hit that base hit over the second baseman, which I think was 09. Was it 09, Gabe? Or maybe like, oh,
that's gotta be 08, 09.
yeah,
If
yeah, I think,
It
yeah, I
was
think,
08
Soriano was
on that. I
around.
remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And those
So
games definitely had a lot of energy. Because I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
Gordon Beckham had a moment on the
mhm,
south side where he had a
yeah,
walk-off hit.
uh-huh. Yeah, and it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because that game that game that I went to, so much there was so much traffic. We left really late. I think we got there like in the seventh inning, and I got to see that, so it made it all worth it. I was like, I don't even care if I missed most of the game. I saw the walk off, but that's pretty crazy. That's the last time that the Cubs had a walk off at Wrigley against the Sox there. So that was cool. Yeah, and I think with another thing with Morel is that he actually as much as he's had a good year overall, he hadn't been hitting well, going into that at bat. And I mean, in the second half, he has a 108 weighted runs created plus, which of course is above average, but compared to his first half, it's way lower. But in high leverage situations, man, I mean, that guy goes out there and hits 348. I think that just says it all, as what Gabe says. The moment's bigger, and he's there and he makes it happen. So, with the Cubs, they're 19-8 since July 18th. But one of the things I wanted to make sure to bring up was Marcus Stroman, because he obviously went into the IL with a hip injury. He wasn't looking good. He had like a bad month and a half, maybe, and now he had a setback last week, which, to be honest, I forgot what the injury was in that one, but he had another setback a couple days ago. I think they said it was Monday, and now they revealed that it was a right rib cartilage fracture, and that there's no timetable for his return. The Cubs have been surviving without Stroman. He's missed, I believe, like a couple starts at this point. Javier Assad has held his own there. And they've been able to,
Yeah.
I think they maybe done at least one bullpen game or something like that with like Drew Smiley. So they've been able to hold their own. Obviously come October, that matters. If they're able to make it. So, I want to get your guys' take as to where the Cubs go from here with Marcus Stroman. Is it one of those things where, should they try to get him in September? Should they bring up somebody? I mean, right now, they have plenty of options down there that they could bring up. That guys that are, feeling. I know, I think Ben Brown might have been on the injured list for a while, but I think he's back. So he's one of the guys that might be able to help him in September. There's been rumors in the last week, or just murmurs, I should say, that maybe Pete Crow Armstrong comes up in September, because of course they
Yeah.
can bring up a pitcher. They can bring up a pitcher and a hitter in September. So we'll start with you, Miles. What are your thoughts on the Marcus Stroman situation? And is it one of those things where they should just shut him down for the regular season and then see what he can give you in October? Because I talked to a friend that's in the medical field, and he said that with this particular injury, not counting the rest of his stuff, his particular injury, most likely with how much movement he has, it'll be about three weeks, maybe a month, before he can start pitching again. So we'll see. But what are your overall thoughts on the Stroman situation, Miles?
Yeah, I think Cubs. I think the Cubs should definitely start weighing their options in terms of, you know, how are we going to kind of continue to not carry this load, because, like you said, the Cubs have been really holding their own, even without Stroman, and he's been such a vital part of this team winning as much as they have this year. I think it's definitely good to kind of keep your eye out for a couple of guys, that are down in AAA that might be able to come up and make some noise for the most part. And I say a lot of this because I still feel that we are not there yet in terms of pitching. And yes, this has been an incredible year in terms of a lot of statistics pitching wise. I still don't think that in terms of competing well in like a playoff series, I don't feel like our pitching is up to par compared to other teams. But then again, the postseason turns puppies into dogs. So in the meantime, I would like for us to kind of get some arms up. I got an eye on Jordan Wicks. I think he'd be a cool guy to bring up to kind of close out September for us. Check in on Marcus Stroman throughout that entire month and just see what we do. I think the last thing the Cubs want to do, and I think they already have this mindset. The last thing we want to do is rush someone, from an injury. So I think we're going to be okay. But we are not better without him. We are much better with him. We are much better with as much good pitching as we can get. I get scared when I see certain things like Jamison Tyone, who hasn't been terrible. He hasn't been great either. But overall, it's been a bad year for him. And so for me, any great starter that we can have in our lineup, any sort of bolster we can have in that rotation, that's a thumbs up to me. So I'm hoping that he comes back in time for the playoffs if we're still in the hunt.
Yeah, and yeah, you mentioned it with Town. He was good in July, but in August he kind of looked a little more like his June and May self, where it just hasn't gone well for him. So hopefully he's able to find it because hopefully he's able to find that July self again, because if he can somehow be consistent and throughout, he can easily fit in that number 2 role behind Justin Steele or Hendricks, wherever Hendricks is at right now. Because I think Hendricks right now, with how he's pitching, maybe sits closer to a 3 if Stroman's healthy. So we'll see what happens there, but I think it's going to be very interesting. Gabe, what's your take on this whole situation? And who's somebody, maybe, as I know you're very well educated with the whole minor league system. If there any guy in particular you want to bring up if you're in the Cubs position, because they have plenty of options, as Miles mentioned Jordan Wicks, and I mentioned Katie Horton. But there's also Brent Brown and all that. But yeah, what's your take on the whole situation?
I mean, well, with that news, the Stroman, and I heard about that prior to game 1 of the Crosstown series, that you're gonna have to bring somebody up, because with the trade deadline having passed and you not acquiring an arm on the open market when you had the chance, something that a lot of Cub fans that I know personally were getting on Jed Hoyer about and are still frustrated at Jed Hoyer in the front office about not doing, even though they brought in Candelario, a much needed bat and a guy that serves a viable presence on the corners at third and first. They're gonna have to bring somebody up. And you bring up Jordan Wicks, Miles. That's a guy that I think would be one of the first options you would consider bringing up. He's a left-handed arm. He has a nice sinker. He has a forward-seam fastball that rides out, even though it's not, the highest in terms of miles per hour. It can go around 90, 91, but it's electric enough to get by hitters. He has a repertoire of pitches in his arsenal, and he's the guy that's really the most MLB ready among their 3 prospects, I would say, top 3 prospects currently that consist of their arms. And I wouldn't be against it, because if you're the Cubs, let's be real, what the hell do you have to lose, man? You're playing with house money. This is a team that finished the year well a season ago, but no one really knew what direction this ball club was going in. They knew that they were taking some flyers on some one-year guys such as Bellinger, Mancini. Mancini hasn't worked out so much, but Cody Bellinger appears to have found himself a home here. If he wants it this offseason, has played very well here. You get these young guys a shot to see what September baseball is like in the midst of a pennant race. You don't know how much that can pay off for their development down the road in the future. It's a lot of pressure to put on these guys, but you really don't have a choice. And I got to give a credit to, Javier Assad, who really put in a solid performance in game 2 against the White Sox and didn't make life easy on him, even though he gave up 3 runs. And a couple you could say was attributed to his defense and the lack thereof from guys such as Ian Happ making some costly errors in the field. So, they're going to have to bring up one of those young arms in either Wicks, Ben Brown. I don't see Cade Horton coming up. I think rushing a guy from Double-A up that fast, even though he's one of the top prospects in the game, that would be kind of rough. But they have some guys that are ready, and I think they can make that call if need be. And I wouldn't be surprised if Pete Crow Armstrong got called up either. I've seen a lot of his highlights, and I see what the hype's about. He's a guy that could at least be a viable defensive replacement when they have leads, in the top half of the ninth or bottom of the ninth, depending on where they playing.
Yeah, no, you brought up some good points, and you're right about with the whole, with the fact that, them able to bring up a guy like Jordan Wicks would be a good idea. Also, another reason that'd be a good idea was because, say, they bring up Wicks, right? Marcus Stroman comes back in time for the last 2 weeks of September, and Jordan Wicks can just slide into the bullpen, and and he would slide into a position where they really needed a left-handed reliever. I know they actually just signed to a minor league deal left-handed reliever and veteran 36-year-old Richard Blyer. Obviously not somebody that a lot that's gonna make headlines, but they needed a guy at the deadline. They weren't able to get him. I know they were interested in like a Brad Hand, and it didn't work out there. Uh, as well as Barlow, I believe, also from the Royals, but it didn't work out there. So they're gonna have to get in for get these guys and bring them up. And Jed Hoyer said that when he was asked about why not you go out there and get that. And I get the frustration when not getting a starter. I understand that because it didn't look like the Cubs were interested at all at a starter. And when they asked Jed, he said we have plenty of guys in the minors they could bring up, and I think they do. But also who knows how much they're going to lean on those guys? How much can you lean on those guys? And you mentioned, with Pete Crow Armstrong, there's also Owen Casey down there who's killing it. I believe he has like a 984 OPS in AAA. You could even argue by just how much time he's been in AAA that he deserves more than PCA, but I'm not going to argue because both of those guys are very talented and could easily make a big league roster next year. But Crow Armstrong is the guy that's, they rated him 80 out of 80 for outfield. So, would love to see him out here playing center field, and maybe you could even like DH, Talkman or DH Suzuki, depending on who's playing right field and all that. So it'll be really interesting to see what the Cubs do in September because they have plenty of options and they could throw these young guys out there, and that would be crazy because, I mean, you look at some of these guys and how good they are, these young guys. You throw them in there in the series against the Brewers, anything can happen. And the Brewers got their own young guns as well. So that's going to be.
I saw them last weekend. Yeah, they definitely got some young guns that could go, and they only just started because they put together an impressive draft. Guys like Tyler Black, Jackson Churio, who's one of the top prospects in the game. This dude is 18 in AA ball, and Biloxi and is killing it. They are coming. They are coming. And they have Tyler Mizorowski, who's a solid farmhand of theirs, starting pitcher. They on the rise. And Pittsburgh, too. The NL Central is a division where if your farm system isn't good, I don't see you contending because these teams are coming. Cincinnati is coming. Pittsburgh is coming. And Milwaukee, they've arrived.
The same.
You're right. And I think we said this before on the show, and the fact that a couple of years from now, NL Central may not be the laughing joke anymore that it is now. It might be one of the best divisions in baseball with all the talent like O'Neal Cruz, Ellie De La Cruz, Pete Crow Armstrong, if he comes out and does his work there. And I mean, the Cubs have the fourth best farm system according to MLB Pipeline. So that just says a lot. So we'll see. They got a lot that's going for them. Let's see if they can execute. They got the three against Kansas City and then 3 at Detroit. And they're sitting at 62 and 58 with, of course, the division and the wild card still, up for grabs. The Cubs are 2.5 behind the Brewers. And then I believe they're tied for a spot, or they're in the last spot. Yeah, they're in the third, actually tied, I believe. Yeah, they're tied with the Marlins and the Reds for that third spot in the wild card as we sit here at 8 o'clock on Thursday. But moving on, we'll move on to the White Sox, who are 48 and 73. Because I did want to ask Gabe, I did want to ask you a little bit about Pedro Grifol's comments after the game that some Sox fans had issue with, and some other people talked about it, whatever. But I want to get your take because he talked a little bit about how this is the toughest loss of the year. Now, I've heard people talk about it saying, that's ridiculous. These guys have lost like 70 games. And these are Sox fans I've heard this from. And then I've also heard Sox fans say, hey, these games matter more, so they're going to hurt more, because they're playing against their crosstown rival. But what's your take on these comments by Pedro Grifol? And is it one of those things where, you're not paying too much attention to Grifol? Is he maybe gone by the end of the year? Who knows what's going on with the Sox? What's your whole thought on the situation of those comments?
Recency bias. In the moment when you lose a game like that, it always feels like the worst loss of the year when you're 20 minutes removed from it. But as a fan who has watched all of these games, who has been to half of the home games this season, if not slightly more, I can recall a shit ton of games that were the worst loss of the year. I mean, I can sit here all day. I remember being with you, Saul, and seeing this team come back from a 2-run, a 3-run deficit, put up like a 4 spot in the top of the 7th, and then blow the game and give it right back at the hands of Joe Kelly in Detroit. That was painful.
Mm-hmm.
Then going back the next day on a Sunday to Comerica, sitting behind home plate, pumping up Tim Anderson and everything after they came back from a 2-run deficit, went into the ninth with a 1-run lead, lost it in extra innings. I can remember being in the game with you, Saul, another one here in Chicago, Sunday against the Miami Marlins. Day before, blew a 1-0 lead in the top of the ninth. Had a 5-1 lead at the end of 7. Miami scores 2 in the 8th to cut it to 2. And then they scored 4 in the 9th to win. Or whatever. So, like it's a lot of losses I could point to as far as worst losses of the year. But I understand where he's going with it, but I don't think it was the worst loss of the season. It just was the magnitude of it and having the game in balance, or so you thought, only to let it slip away with one swing of the bat that proved to be the most important swing of the ball game because it was a 3-run homer, and he gave the Cubs the Crosstown Cup as well as the overall series in 3-1 style. So, I mean, I don't make much of that. I know why White Sox fans want to be bitter. I'm not trying to tell fans how to fan, but I'm frustrated as hell too. However, I'm not gonna kill Pedro Grifol solely off of those comments. And one thing I will say about White Sox fans is, as much as I love us and I get the passion, I get the pride, and I get one to uphold the club to a winning standard, there was never any guarantee with this shit. Especially when the front office did not spend the money in the fashion in which we expected them to. Yes, they have the highest payroll in the Central. However, majority of it went to the bullpen. They never addressed the true positions of need in which they needed to in order to take this team to the next level, be it with right field, be it with second base, and most importantly, a manager that these young guys could grow with and show them the ropes and the nuances of what it took to win.
Yeah, no, that you're right about that, and it's one of those things that we've said ad nauseum at this point, right? With the Sox, and what went wrong. There's many things, and I think this offseason is going to be very important because, as they've said, they're trying to compete, whether you believe it or not, in 2024. They definitely, we've talked about before here. They definitely have the pieces when it comes to the young talent, but if they can do it, we've said that before. So hopefully they're able to execute. They got 3 at Colorado and then 3 against Seattle at home. So it'll be really fascinating to see what the Sox are able to do there. And this opportunity, and I've said this before to other Sox fans, like this is an opportunity for a lot of the guys like Gregory Santos and Oscar Colas to have those at bats, have those opportunities on the mound, to make a name for themselves and make the team next year, because I know that's going to be important for them as well. So hopefully that works out. But moving on to the rest of the league, there's a big situation, of course, very unfortunate situation, and a lot of the stuff coming out of it. It's coming out from Hispanic outlets, of course, that have broken news before, and like Mike Rodriguez but Wander Franco, of course, the all-star of the Rays, of course, has been accused of having a relationship with an underage girl. And there's other news that has broken. I mean, there's so much going on that is just a whirlwind. And like apparently, like they're doing a thorough investigation in the Dominican Republic. But what they have found out, they apparently is moving really fast, they said. And from what it turns out, a lot of people believe, this is as of today on Thursday, the 17th. A lot of people believe here or there in the DR and here that Wander Franco has played his last game in Major League Baseball. So if he did what they said he did, which, I mean, it's looking like it at this point, that is well deserved, and that for sure will I mean, obviously outside of the ramifications of the real world, puts the Rays in a bit of a bind, because this is a player that they put their future on. 7-year contract, 180 mil. There's just, yeah. There's probably, I don't know. There's no words for this, but you guys have any comments you want to make towards the situation? Because I know it's rough, whether it be baseball related or not. This is a situation that's very abstract, and the news I feel like comes out every minute. But anybody want to say anything?
I say something on it real quick,
Mm-hmm.
man. This was a dude who, when he arrived, was the top prospect in all of baseball. And a lot of people anticipated it. This was a guy who the Rays were so high on that they had him on their World Series roster. People forget this.
Mm-hmm.
When they played against the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series during the COVID year of 2020. And he showed up on the scene and had a phenomenal rookie season, which earned him that big payday. And if all of this is true, and I know things are going to continue to come out in the coming weeks, this could not happen at a worse time for the Tampa Bay Rays organization, especially when this news came shortly after it was announced that Shane McClanahan was going under the knife for Tommy John surgery. It was out for the 2024 season, including the rest of this season. And the Rays are in the thick of a wild card race right now on a West Coast road trip where the schedule is doing them no favors. They're going up against a Giants team that's fighting in the NL wild card race. This team was playing on a 100-win pace in April. And now, not only are they trailing Baltimore in the East, they're finding themselves trying to figure out, like, hey, who can we count on that's healthy, that's able to help us to stay afloat? And it's just a very unfortunate situation. If Wander Franco goes without playing another MLB game, man, it'll be one of the most tragic stories I've ever heard, albeit self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm.
Because, man, just seeing the talent that's coming through that organization, like they got Junior Caminero, 6th-ranked prospect in all of baseball according to MLB Pipeline, who they got in a steal trade with Cleveland, who is coming. And even though he can play short on top of third, just the thought of that pairing together, man, and the news dropped crazily, like on the day that the Rays had a promotion where they were giving away a hat that he designed to kids that were 14 or younger.
Oh my God.
And like when I read about the story and I saw he was trending, I found out about it after the Sox Brewers game on Sunday, riding on the red line to a friend's house. And I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. Yeah, it's just an unfortunate story, man. And the game suffers as well as, families, not just the Franco family, but the family of the underage minor or minors.
Mm-hmm.
And stories are coming out by the day and by the hour.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. And I saw one tweet, that said by one of the reporters saying that as they're going through the investigation, apparently that there might be more than one minor.
Yeah,
so
I saw that too.
Yeah. So and apparently more than one guy too. So it might not just be him. There's maybe other players. Who knows what's gonna happen? But
yeah.
Miles, did you have anything to say on this particular matter?
Yeah, nothing that hasn't been said. And I think there's definitely been some internal things that he's been dealing with this year. I think we've seen that kind of reflect in times when he's struggling.
Yeah.
This is someone who clearly needs guidance or needs better guidance. This is unfortunate. This is, like you said, unfortunate for the family of both sides. The Rays now you got to point to the guys like, hey, who's going to pick up the load? Who's going to pick up the slack of this? Is we're slipping right now, and this doesn't help us at all. But Rays fans can still be very optimistic because you still got one hell of a team over there, and the season isn't over by any means. This team's going to be in it all the way up until whenever their bell rings. But this is unfortunate, and I the Rays are very they're a team that promotes a lot of personality and being yourself. Um, and it's very rare that you hear them that they bench someone because of how angry that they're getting. Clearly, he had other things going on, and I think a little bit of that has come to light as to what the hell was causing him to kind of lash out in moments. It's not an excuse. It just can't happen. So you make your own bed. You got to lay with it. It's not okay. So I'm rooting for the Rays to figure it out, and I'm hoping that the best case resolution comes out for all sides when it comes to this.
But you know what's so scary about this situation is like this team, when they came through Chicago in early April, I just thought that this team was on a trajectory to get to the World Series. Now I'm asking myself, like, I know they got talent, but can this team make the playoffs? Because they had a rough month in July. And I remember me and Saul, we talked about this after the All-Star break, teams that we saw rising up the standings and falling. I saw Tampa Bay having a slight drop-off, but I didn't see this coming. And I was curious as to why Wander was being benched in some games and why Kevin Cash was, disciplining him. But if you'd have said it was this on the hush-hush, I would have been like, you kidding me?
Yeah, no, and the fact that looking at the teams that are in the wild card, you're right. I mean, there's plenty of season left. I think the only reason why I would still say the Rays are probably still going to make the playoffs is just because the teams under them, like the Mariners and Red Sox.
Of course,
I don't think they're very serious. I think that this kind of leads into how I want to end the show on a lighter note here at talking a little bit more about the wild card race. I want to get your guys' takes on what you guys think is a better wild card race. Do you think it's the NL or the AL? And in the AL, of course, I think that one you could actually make an argument. Those are the teams that are going to end up in the end up in the postseason with the Rays, the Astros, the Blue Jays, because those are some of the best teams in baseball there, just in that particular area. But we'll start with you, Miles. Which of the wild card races between the NL and the AL do you think is more interesting? And I know it's tough to say. I know it's tough not to say the NL just because the Cubs are in it, because the Cubs are in the thick of that, but they also have an opportunity to win the division. But the NL one's closer. But I know that the AL with the teams flip flop, because I know you want to end up in first. You still want to get that first spot, the wild card. But yeah, what's your take on the wild card race and which one's better?
That's so tough, man. Because even I've been looking at both of these as we've been talking, and it's crazy to see the state that the Yankees are in. I think this still isn't being talked about a lot in baseball right now. I think this is one of the most I don't know if even surprising, because I kind of saw this coming, and I kind of talked about it last year in terms of the Yankees. Just look, it's good to really bet on your guys, but you also need to know when changes have to be made and when things are not working. Seeing this Yankees ball club, the season were to end today, they're not in the playoffs and they're a game below 500. That is absurd. That is crazy. So, I think there's so much to be interested within the AL. But I think when I look at the NL, bro, this is like a 6-team race, bro. Even with the Diamondbacks as being a game above 500, they're not that far behind the Marlins. They're not that far behind the Reds. The Reds are kind of right on top of the Cubs. As much as we're loving what's going on the South Side, we got very little room to slip up. Very little room. The Reds are here. They're letting the Cubs know, hey, we're right behind you. Don't F it up. We'll take it right from you. It's gonna be, you guys will be singing "Go Cubs Go" to go home. It's just I'm just so much more interested in this in the NL, not just because of the Cubs, but there's nothing. There's not a single team that I'm looking at is guaranteed to run away with this thing right now. Even with the Phillies being at the top of this wild card with 11 games above 500, the Giants are right there, 64 and 57, kind of tailing them as well. Then you got the Cubs. Then you got the Reds, the Marlins, who are playing hot baseball. You got Jake Berger coming into town, delivering a double cheeseburger with extra fries and a large drink. It's a lot. It's a lot to look forward to within that NL race. And I think, what we're seeing right now, in my opinion, is not a snapshot of what we're going to see by the time, the end of September comes around. That's how close this is. None of this shit is guaranteed. Just like Gabe said, this wild card can be totally different in about 2 to 3 weeks. So I gotta say the NL just because, dude, look at that thing. Every single team is right there. So we'll see what happens.
It's one of those things where I think I'll make the joke before anybody else does. You gave me the idea, Miles, as you were talking about the music, the song, or whatever. I think a lot of teams want the Cubs to, instead of saying "Go Cubs Go," they want them to be singing "Go Cabo Go," because they'd be going to Cabo instead of playoffs. So I'm just gonna I said it because I don't want anyone else to say it, Gabe. You know what I'm saying? So, but Gabe, what's your take? What's the best wild card race right now?
I've been thinking about this question since you proposed it to me, and I saw it on your show notes, man. And I don't think it's a wrong answer whether you think it's the
Mhm.
American League or National League. I know Miles says the National League, and I get it, but Arizona is a team to me that they're falling fast. And I think it's due to lack of pitching and
For
arms
sure,
getting
yeah.
injured, and that's hurt them greatly. San Diego could make it interesting, but they need a lot of work. They need a lot of work in order to make that happen. But when I look at this American League wild card race, and I know we all know that the American League East is the best division, bar none, in
Mhm.
all of baseball, besides the National League West. I thought going into the season that there would be at least 3 playoff teams from the American League East. It still could be. However, the Seattle Mariners are coming. They've won 7 out of their last 10 games. They're currently only a half a game back in the wild card race of Toronto for the third and final wild card spot in the American League. Something's going to have to give. And while Toronto is playing 500 ball and Tampa Bay is playing close to 500 in their last 10, if this Seattle offense can continue to stay hot with the schedule that they have, they can leapfrog someone. I don't see Houston being leapfrog. I don't see Texas being leapfrog. I think whoever finishes runner up in the AL West, they'll get a spot. But somebody in the East should be on alert. And it's either going to be Tampa Bay or Toronto, in my opinion, that falls. And that's if the Mariners continue to keep doing what they're doing. I know Jake Berger has given Miami a great deal of power, as advertised. I'm happy to see him balling. I know a lot of White Sox fans are bitter about that trade. I'm not so much. I think the White Sox so high on him while they had the chance. But it's great to see him in action on a contender. Josh Bell has found a fountain of youth in Miami as well, hitting for some tremendous power. They're winning games, and they're never out of ball games because they don't believe that they're out of ball games. And Luis Ariz and those guys are doing a hell of a job. That National League playoff race is going to be interesting, but like teams like Cincinnati, I'm curious to watch them as well down this stretch of the year because they're a young ball club, and they kind of are in a situation to me that Baltimore was in last year. I don't know if this is their year, but they could prove a lot of people wrong. And if they do, it's going to be a lot of angry Cubs fans, I think, come October.
Yeah, and you mentioned it too with Berger and Bell. I've been hearing a lot about them and how that lengthens the lineup for Miami, and they also have proven pitching. Alcantara, despite his season that, yeah, I'm sure he wishes it was better, but he could still go out there and toss a complete game like he did the other day. So, they have those guys, and we'll see what happens. But it's gonna be a crazy race, and from both ends. And I believe you're right with the Blue Jays, but I just need to see a little more. I think they could do it. They definitely have it all right there. And as long, but once Bo Bichette, when Bo Bichette is out there, I mean, they obviously have one of the best teams in baseball right there just because of how talented he is. So it's one of those races that's gonna go down to the wire. And it's gonna be as entertaining as it is. And I think this is one of those things where this just proves as to why they did this. This adds more excitement to the game. It says more teams are in it. So and even as Miles mentioned, the Yankees, that extremely disappointing, right? But even if they think the season's over, as they're a game under 500 for the first time since 1995, they still are in the race. And when you have Aaron Judge,
Yeah.
anything could happen. So it's
I
gonna
gotta
be
ask you a
intense.
question real
Oh, go
quick,
ahead.
Saul
Yeah.
and Miles. Y'all know the last time the Yankees finished under 500 in a season?
It wasn't that 95 season?
No.
Wasn't that nice?
Oh,
What
was
was
it?
that?
1992 was the last year that the New York Yankees finished the regular season under 500.
None of us were born yet.
1992. To put that in perspective for you, I wasn't even born yet.
Yeah.
This is how dominant this team has been over the last 30 years and running.
We wouldn't even thought at that point.
I
That's
know.
crazy. Yeah, so
Wow.
it's gonna be I think it's one of those things where I think I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but because they have a lot of problems. But it's one of those things with the Yankees is that you give Aaron Judge like a week with like 7-8 home runs, which can happen. They could easily find themselves back in the race, but a lot of things have to happen
You can still
for that.
see him kind of working through that toe discomfort as well.
Yeah.
Even when I was a
Yeah.
kid, yeah, you can still kind of see, taking kind of not limping, but you can see there's still some discomfort. He's still kind of playing it kind of safe. But you can see him starting to heat up again a little bit too.
Yeah, and I think baseball will be better for it. I love seeing Aaron Judge going deep all the time. So that's another thing. Him and Ohtani, it's the best show in baseball. So I think it's a good place to wrap things up for this edition of the At Bat Podcast, episode 62. I want to thank everyone for watching, and of course, make sure you watch all our coverage for the Bears as well on the Bears Den with Joe Tanksley and I. Keep following all War Media socials. Keep track on that. We just had an open run podcast drop, and so take a look at that. And we appreciate everyone watching. And this was the At Bat Podcast. See you next time, everybody.